Get ready for another video in Alex's garage. Alright, so today we're going to install some heater hoses and radiator hoses. Aside from just buying parts and schlocking them onto the car with a screwdriver and a wrench, there's some opportunities in here to make this a little bit cleaner. And also there are some inconsistencies in the design on these MGBs. So first off, this is a 77, so the top hose kind of goes like this, as opposed to on some of the older cars, the return line goes the other direction. So there's the radiator's over here, and it kind of goes like this. And 77, it goes like this. Actually, I think I got that backwards. It'll go like this. There's a little bit of loop in it right there. But, oh, and, you know, I got to warn you, actually the government has to warn us, that if you use these radiator hoses for something other than radiating, it could cause reproductive harm. So, you know, just use the hoses for the intention that they were designed for. Bad joke, I know. So anyway, let me talk about the heater return line. So this line right here, it's the return from the heater, needs to connect to this hose right here as it connects into the water pump, kind of right here. Right? So right in there, right? So there's a number of different methods where people I've seen on a number of the forums where folks have come up with creative ways of connecting that heater return line. So let me show you some pictures of some of the ones I've seen on the forums and add some interjection on those, the pros and cons and some of the things that I like. So here's some pictures from the forums. So I found a couple of really interesting photos of different ways of routing the return line that goes to the heater. Here's the return line here. This is an 18V. You can see the radiator, just like mine, has the entry at the top. It comes up from the other side at the bottom. This is an identical configuration to my car. They have a Weber downdraft in this case, so they ran their return line for the heater underneath the Weber downdraft. And I think that's a really good solution in this case. It looks like they used a solid piece of piping right here, but they still ran it off to the side. And that would be a really good solution if I had a Weber downdraft. But I have a side draft, and it's a little different configuration. Here is an older MG. You see how the top of the radiator goes to the other direction, and it has a different thermostat cover. And in this case, you can see the heater return goes in a typical, you see with the older vehicles, where it's connected over the top of the lifter cover, and it's bolted to the lifter cover bolts right on the top here. This is a very typical configuration. A lot of people complain that you have to change, you have to adjust your lifters periodically, and every time you have to do that, you always got this pipe in the way, and so it's kind of inconvenient. And it actually, you can see it jogs over one way and jogs over the other way, so it's a little less of a direct route. And in this case, it looks like he made it out of copper instead of the one that you can buy at Moss. So anyway, this is an older car with the older configuration, and I really like this direct line where you can see the line. And here is my vehicle, fresh out of the barn. You can see here's where I have that diamond plate mud shield here. This is what the old one looked like. Here's the return line coming here. You can see I've got the 18V, the 77, the radiator goes the other direction. But you can see here, I've got the Weber with the side draft, and in this case, they're running, just the open stacks, no kind of air cleaner or anything, but they have run the return line under those stacks and back up to the heater return line. This is really not the ideal configuration for this particular vehicle, I don't think. Um, and I, as much as I want to run the stacks, I still want to put an air box in here so the airflow in here, I don't want that to be heated by this heater line. I do like the use of the stainless steel pipe, and this was the stainless steel piping that I used in my solution. Ultimately, at the end, I was able to cut this up into pieces and use it to connect. Here's one more view of another vehicle. This is stainless steel gone awry. He's got stainless steel on everything, even the return pipe. Again, this is an older model where the top pipe is goes to the right side, and here you can see he's got stainless steel wrapping um, at the return line. He's wrapped that with stainless steel, and then he has stainless wrapping all the way across here. He has a custom stainless pipe that comes across, and you can see this is actually kind of an inspiration for my solution, because he built a couple of brackets that bolt onto. Um, he has some kind of a custom heat shield here that goes, and he has a Weber. It's very similar Weber side draft, but he has a heat shield under here, and he has a couple of bolts that he's bolted this thing into to make that work. So that was kind of my inspiration. That and the realization that this nut right here matches up geometrically with this nut right here. So it worked really well for me to make my bracket work right here. So I like the stainless steel look, but with that said, I think you can really try too hard to wrap everything in stainless steel, because you still have all this, vacuum tubing and everything going everywhere. You're still going to have some black hoses. So you have to kind of balance it. So anyway, these are what I found on the forums that I drew my inspiration for my solution. So let's get on back to that. Okay, so originally this vehicle, as a 77, I think that the 77s were designed to have that return line go under the Strombergs. They go under, kind of along this little area, and then come up over the top of the steering shaft and connect up there. I don't think that that's a problem. It kind of it skirts the heat of the exhaust pipes a little bit, I suppose, but I don't like that design. It's just a hose kind of out there in the middle of everywhere. So the idea here is we're going to take from the older designs where you can actually buy this component right here. This is a heater return pipe, and it's intended on the older vehicles to be connected right across the top here. But what I've done on these is I've bent the tabs down so that instead of being connected in here, I want to connect it something like this. And the reason why I did that is it seems kind of obvious to me. I've seen this in a couple of forums where people have taken a piece of copper pipe and run it along the bottom here. But it seems kind of obvious to me, because the lines where they would have you connect them, these little screws up here, are lined up directly with the screws down here, right here and here. And it's just convenient that you can use the same screw holes if you just bend the tabs down. The problem is that if you put these tabs down, it's A, it's touching and you don't want it to touch, and B, it just doesn't quite fit. So what I've done here is taken some scrap material that I had, and I just made some tabs. These are made of really thin, but they're spring steel, so they're rigid. And by being thin, I won't have to worry about the length on these bolts. I've already loosened these to show you. But so I made both of these equal so that they can go in there. And what that will do is it'll give me the ability to raise that up a little bit so that that cross member, that little pipe, is going to hover about here. I've already taken measurements. This is the vacuum that will connect to the brake advance, or the vacuum diaphragm on the brakes, and it does not affect the linkage on the carburetor. So I think that's going to be a really good solution going forward. So let's go ahead and mock that up and have a peek and see what that looks like. Which puts me right here. Now, if you look at this, the angle here is pretty acute. That's almost 90 degrees. But if I were to just move this just a half an inch, then it'll be a little less for me to bend this a little bit, put a little bent hose right in here, and then it'll be a little less acute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about this much of this hose off and force it forward. And that, if I take too much off, then I'll be bending the hose a little bit. But if I take like an inch off, maybe just about an inch off, which, by the way, I mean, look how close that is to the pulley. I'm going to have to be careful for that. But, I don't want to push it further on. If I could push it further on an inch, then it would be great. But I'm going to take about an inch off of this hose to force this union to be right about here. And that will reduce the angle that I need to connect right here. All right, so it's looking pretty good. The mock-up looks nice. It's pretty firm. It's not going to be a problem. It lines right up with the hose over there. All right, so let's go ahead and take this off and give it a chopping. All right, so for the two heater hoses that go into the heater box itself, I'm going to try to reuse this stainless steel heater hose that was the single supply line that went from the heater return back up to the water pump. I've cleaned it up real nice. It looks like it's going to do okay. It was holding water when I took it apart, so it should be it should have some good integrity. But the trick with stainless steel mesh on a hose is that when you cut it, it turns into a Chinese finger trap, and it goes sproing and it goes everywhere, right? So normally when you order these, you order them to length, and they're quite expensive. But I don't want to just throw this out. It has some life in it, and I think it would be nice to have some stainless steel piping at the firewall. So my plan here is to use heat shrink wrapping. Now, I found this stuff at the Home Depot. This stuff is heavy wall heat shrink tubing. It's a little thicker than most heat shrink tubing, but it does shrink at a ratio of 4:1. So this will be easy enough to get over and then shrink it on. I'm going to cut this in about a 1-inch strip, and then I'm going to shrink it where I intend to cut. And then I'll just cut with this cutoff wheel on my angle grinder. It should cut through the metal and the rubber with no problems, and the heat shrink should keep it from creating this frayed mess of finger damage. This just impending finger pain. So let's go ahead and chop this up and see if this works. If it doesn't, I'll just use regular black tubing, but you'll be able to see just as quickly as I am whether or not this is a viable solution for making smaller sections of this pipe. All right, so that took some doing, but you see I've got it nice, loose and free. I had to use a pair of pliers in there and wrangle the ends because it was just too sharp for my fingers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on and I'm going to shrink it down right about there, and then I'll just cut it off clean. That should give me a nice fray unfrayed edge. Make sure I get right to the end where there's no more frays. And then I'll be able to put other pieces on and measure the cuts. And then I'll have nice managed pieces of stainless steel tubing, hopefully. So let's go ahead and get the heat gun running. All right, so that's a nice sleeve on there. The heat gun did a really good job of shrinking it down. I'm just going to cut the edge off, and we'll see if this heat shrink is enough to keep that from springing back out and becoming an issue. So let's see how this works out. All right, I think that did a pretty good job. Maybe we'll trim it up a little bit over here. A little bit of snags on there, but it's way better than this. I mean, there's no way you can even put a hose clamp on that, and when we put a hose clamp on that, it'll dress it up real nice. You won't have a big ugly thing hanging out the back. So yeah, I'm just going to dress this up a little bit, and then we'll start sliding on and measure our cuts, and then we'll come away with some nice pieces. All right, so this will go from my heater control valve to the heater. 8.5 inches long. Got some flex to it. A little bit of flex. The heat does deform at the end. It makes like a little mushroom, but it does manage it. It makes it a little bit more manageable. I think that this is still an acceptable solution. The hose clamp is going to keep on here, and that will keep this from sliding in. So I still think this is a viable solution. Anyway, it's a nice looking piece of hose. Here you go. All right, quick note on these little hose clamps. First off, although it has a screwdriver, don't use a screwdriver. Find yourself a bit that matches the end, and you'll find that it is like way easier to torque on this. Second thing you might want to look at getting yourself is a ratcheting screwdriver. When you're jacking with these in the car, it's so much easier just to be able to crank on it and get to where you're going. And third thing is, I don't like having a whole lot of this notching exposed. I just soon have a nice solid stripe. So I like to get them that they're a little bit bigger and then trim them down. And when you trim these down, make sure you put a little diagonal on the cuts, just so that you don't have a sharp edge that you're gonna cut yourself on later on. But you know, the idea is get them as close to where they're going to be tight, so you have not that much showing, and try to get as much of the just straight band as you can. And if you buy these things in bulk at Harbor Freight, they're a lot cheaper than just going to an auto parts store. So just quick little note on these things, some easy stuff. When you put them on the car, make sure that you have them oriented in a place where you can tighten them. And also, when you tighten them, you have to keep into account that this screw is going to move as it tightens. So, you know, plan ahead for it to creep, so that you know that by the time you get it tightened, you'll still be able to untighten it later. All right, so just a quick little note on that. And there you go, nice clean cut. See, it's managing the end pretty nicely, so those frayed edges don't protrude much. They're still there, but they're not an issue. Once you put a hose clamp on it, it's going to look really great. All right, so those are my two pieces. 8.5 piece goes from the heater control valve. This one goes from the pipe that we just routed across the top of the valve cover, or between the valve cover and the carburetor and the heater. So there you go. All right, so shorten this hose to bring this junction closer, so that the deflection from here to here is less. I went ahead and put my breather filter in right here, just so that I can get an idea of, you know, where the hoses are going to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and just make a hose and bend it over, bend it like Beckham. We'll get this to bend over, and then we'll be done. You can see the heater hoses with the stainless steel are installed, looking pretty slick. They went in really nicely. This one over here had a bit of an S on it, given to do again in the future, and you all can probably take this as a lessons learned. I would probably have put this bar just a little bit higher so that there's less of an S. There you go. Well, there's my solution. We've got the V coming off. You can see I've took a little bit off the front of the hose to move the V forward. It doesn't touch this, and it's far enough away from the heater or the exhaust manifold not to be a problem. The standard bar that everybody has, or they're very easily available. It's you don't have to fashion anything custom. Just bend the tabs. You can see these tabs would have been bended. They would have gone this direction, but I bent them about 90 degrees. Throw some stainless steel bolts in there. I made these little tabs. These are a spring steel. And so they give a little, but they're very rigid. And they're acting as a washer behind the studs, which, as I noticed, are lined up with the exact same holes as the valve covers. Comes up, connected over, another one of these little things. Some stainless steel hoses going into the heater. The heater hoses are all routed. Everything's happy. We've got the upper and lower hoses all managed. So that's my solution for the hoses on a 1977 MGB. I don't think this is going to intrude at all on the carburetor. I've already measured to make sure that it's not going to have a problem with the accelerator linkage. So we'll have to check that as we move on to the next series of videos. But I hope this gives you some insight into some methods on how to very cleanly handle that heater return hose. Please like and subscribe and share this with all of your friends. Have a good day.